Hi, this is Slageth with the return of Dwarf Fortress, or rather, the new appearance of Dwarf Fortress for those of you who probably have not been following what I've been doing. I've been offline for a while. If you've watched any of my Supreme Commander stuff, this is going to be pretty new to you, but I think it's something that a lot of you will enjoy. So this is Dwarf Fortress. It's probably the most epic game that has ever been made in all time. And it's sort of a combination world simulator strategy game. So, so far what you've seen is I've created a world and I'm looking around for a spot to place down my fortress. Looks like I've got a spot there and I'm going to embark in a couple of seconds, just checking out, let's see here. I'm checking out the layout of the land and what minerals occur. Let's see here, yep. So I'm selecting this spot, I'm choosing my team now. You start the game with 7 dwarves. They all have different skills, and the goal of the game is simply to survive. But that's actually not as easy as it sounds. Unlike most strategy games, you actually have to make your own food, defend yourself from wildlife, build shelter, and so on. And so this game is a lot more challenging than your typical strategy game. Let's see here. So I'm selecting some resources and starting. It gives you a little bit of a backstory. And we are wall chains. That's the name of the fortress. Love the auto-generated names in this game. So that's our little caravan. It is a 3D game, as like hokey as the graphics are. It is a 3D game that's 1 level below, 2 levels below, 3 levels below, and then above. So we're going to start by digging downwards. I always basically have pretty standard layout, just dig straight down and then branch out from there. And of course, I love deforestation, so we're going to chop down all the trees in the area right above our fortress and then get started. So one thing you'll notice about this game is I'm not giving orders directly to the dwarves. I'm laying out the fortress, but all the dwarves choose what they do on their own, and the AI is very smart about what dwarves do what, and it optimizes the jobs based on who has skills to do each job. So we're looking around at the wall. You notice that there are different kinds of stone. There are birds flying around, animals, trees. It's actually an extremely in-depth game. There's like dozens of kinds of trees, dozens of kinds of grass and shrubs and stones, and the stones all have like actual real-life, realistic densities and crazy stuff like that. That's the user screen, all of your dwarves, and here I'm looking at one of my my armorer here, looking at his the jobs which he is authorized to do, turning on woodcutting, so that hopefully the woodcutter can get on to more important things. So the first thing that I'm going to do is build out, let's see here, not quite yet. Yeah, here we go. Building out on the first level down. The nice thing about this level is it's all dirt as opposed to stone, and so it's a lot faster to dig through. And the second nice bonus is there aren't any stones to clear away. So I'm going to set down a couple of workshops in this first area and a couple of stockpiles. It's not really intended to be a permanent area because it's not really, the layout that I have here is not really defendable. And later in the game, usually doesn't happen in the first year of the game, but eventually you'll see goblin forces or bandits arrive, and then you really don't want to be using the first, you really want to have a defendable position, and this is not a defendable position. Okay, so I've laid out 2 workshops right there. I'm waiting for the rest of this to get cleared away. So right now I'm operating probably at about 150% speed. Later I'm going to turn up the speed to 1000% just to get through all of the material here. This is the complete footage for the first year of the game. I didn't cut anything out, but I did have to speed through it in order to make the video a reasonable length. Let's see here. So I've set up the first two workshops, a mason's workshop and a carpenter's workshop. Mason's workshop is going to start with doors, and the carpenter's workshop is going to start with beds. And we've got the summary screen there. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm turning off some of the jobs for some of the units. So for example, the carpenter, I've turned off all of the hauling jobs to make sure that he doesn't try to carry wood around. It makes him a lot more efficient if he can just focus on building beds like non-stop and have all the other dwarves do all the hauling jobs. So normally the game will sort of distribute the jobs, and so if you don't give them any preferences, the carpenter will like build one bed and then haul it into the stockpile, and then build a second bed and haul it over to the stockpile. It's not necessarily the most efficient way to do it. So setting up a farm here needs to get dug out, and then we can set up a farm plant so we can grow some food. Normally the game starts you with enough food so that you can probably survive the first year, but certainly by the second year you always want to have a farm set up. But in any case, there's no reason to wait, so I'm setting up it right now, and gives me some safety that I won't run out of food. Setting up a trading depot here. That'll allow us to trade with various caravans that come through the area. It's fairly important, especially for the first year, is you can get a lot of food, especially if you're building items throughout the first year. What I normally like to do is I set up a mechanic shop, which is the third workshop you see in that second level, and I build mechanisms basically non-stop for the entire first year. So what I'm setting up here is a stockpile which will just collect the mechanisms, and I'm going to set it right next to that trading depot. And that'll allow me to move items really quickly in to trade when those traders arrive, which is nice because it allows me to get basically almost everything that they have without having to spend like a huge amount of time just carrying stuff to and from the trading depot. So the farm plot is being set up right now. I'm just going to plant plump helmets because they're the easiest to plant. That trading depot is up and running now. I won't need it for another couple of seasons, but it's good to have. This is the noble / leader chart, the unit chart, and some dwarf descriptions. Every single dwarf has a personality and likes and dislikes, and you can read all about them, you know, and what religions they worship and how many friends they have, and you know, whether they're married or have children, and so on and so forth. And this is all automatically generated by the game, and you can read all sorts of funny stories in there. So I think this is the expedition leader, and one of the funny things is, let's see here, down on like the second to last paragraph, it says for pretty much every single dwarf that they need alcohol to get through the working day. I don't think I've ever seen a dwarf without that in their description. So we're moving along probably at around 1000% now. Setting up a little sub area, a couple more levels down. I like to use 7 wide corridors, so you see that I changed my mind. I was originally going to make a 3 wide corridor, but one of the things about all these fortresses is people make these really tiny corridors, and then like a couple years down the line they always get super crowded, and so I always make my corridors super wide, you know, ridiculously wide, wider than you'd ever really need them to be. But that means that, you know, I'll never have issues with traffic control in the fortresses and people like getting stuck trying to get through a 1 wide corridor. So I'm setting up dormitory right now. Those are all beds that I'm putting down. You do have to put down every single piece of furniture. It's a little bit obnoxious, but again, you don't have to explicitly specify like which dwarf takes that piece of furniture. It'll automatically happen, eventually at some point. The dwarves all eat and sleep on their own. They, go to bed on their own. They get upset if they don't have nice things to wear. We've got a fisher's workshop. And the funny door, the diagonal patterns there are mainly to keep the miasma from spreading. It's a little hack. I could do it with doors, but I'm just sort of short on doors right now, so I'm working around it by doing that instead. So I'm setting up the dormitory, designating it. I'm going to set up a dining room pretty soon. Let's see, we've got another workshop coming in. I think that's a still for distilling beer and alcohol. Let's see here, the farm's going, and we're setting up a mess hall with some tables and chairs. And all of the dwarves are automatically carrying those over. Let's see here, this is the summary screen. It's early summer. It's usually what I check that screen for, is to keep track of my progress. I'm going to set up a broker just in case those traders come along. I'm going to set that to the expedition leader for the moment. See here, we're going to set up a little office and some more workshops. Again, with that funny diagonal pattern. Okay, designated that meeting hall. I'm going to keep digging down. I want to set up a more secure area for the dwarves to actually live. Currently, this is all sort of temporary space, so but I want to have a more secure area. And the main way that you do that is by setting up sort of a longer route with traps along the way. But here, as sort of a temporary measure, I'm creating walls around that main central staircase. And then I'm going to put traps around that. So that's going to be the main defense for the moment. It's not really going to keep anyone out. If goblins came along, I'd be in trouble. But it's good enough, kills the wildlife. Let's see here. So here we are, creating a long corridor. In theory, you could set up something fancy here. I've seen people set up like siege weapons, for example, on the other side of a moat, and then like fire at enemies as they come along. All of that's sort of possible. I'm not really setting up for anything specific here, but having a long, windy corridor like that is perfect for defenses. So setting up doors around my main stairwell. One of the things about this game is you can dig down, but you can also build upwards. And so what I'm doing is I'm setting up walls and a roof around that main staircase. And so I can protect my dwarves from the rain, but also protect them from attacks. And the doors can be locked, and so it's sort of a minimal defense layer. Doesn't really protect you from anything. If like an ogre came along, they'd be able to beat down the door pretty easily. At least it's a stopgap to hold things off for the moment. Let's see here. Got some more migrants. Usually during the course of the game, migrants show up at regular intervals. If you're really, really lucky, you'll get a migrant wave during the first year. Usually doesn't happen. It depends mainly on how much value you make. So if you're busy cranking things out, trading goods and stuff like that during the first year, you will have a good chance of getting a migrant wave. And this is a succession game, so I'm naming a dwarf after myself. usually the way that the succession games work is that people pass the save file along from person to person. Since this is sort of a single player only game, the way that people make it multiplayer is that they take turns and they each play for a year of the game, one person at a time. And year takes about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, depending on how fast you are. And of course, all sorts of funny things happen as, different people have different styles of building, and I have my very wide corridors, and other people have sort of narrower corridors. Setting up a little bridge to the trading depot. Let's see here. So we're flying along at 10x speed right now. This was done after the fact, setting up a whole bunch of bedrooms. Dwarves like to have individual bedrooms in this game. They do get upset at you if you don't do that. And usually what will happen is a dwarf will get into a strange mood, and you basically have one shot at making the dwarf happy by allowing them to build some sort of an artifact. And if they don't build an artifact, or don't succeed at building an artifact, then they go crazy and start killing people. So it's really dangerous when your dwarves aren't happy. You can lose more people in your fortress from dwarves going crazy than from outside attacks in some cases. And I don't have a military right now, so I really can't deal with attacks or dwarves going crazy. So I'm naming each of the dwarves in those bedrooms so that each dwarf has a specific bedroom. In the very beginning of the game, you have to do that manually, but eventually the game will set up a system. You'll actually have a full economy running, with a currency and, prices for each room, and the dwarves will actually have to pay money to rent their rooms. And at that point, it'll all happen automatically, which is really nice. So I'm expanding a little bit, going to add more stockpile space so that I can move a whole bunch of barrels out of that carpenter shop. Okay, setting up another row of bedrooms. Setting up, that's the ceiling tiles over that little entry space. So as you can see, there are a whole bunch of mechanisms sitting out in front of that trading depot. That'll come in really handy once the traders arrive. Okay, let's see here. Looks like those traders arrived. All of those mechanisms are getting moved into the trading depot. Look at those fly. Okay, traders are there. Need to get that trader into the trading depot. He's fishing right now. It's really obnoxious. That tends to happen in this game, is sometimes that dwarf has skill in fishing and he doesn't have so much skill in trading, and so he thinks he needs to be out fishing, and then I have to go and manually adjust his preferences to make sure that he trades. Okay, but we're now in the trading screen, marking all the items I want. I dump all of those mechanisms on them, and then at the end I'll initiate the trade, and then there we go, we've got all that food. Probably added about 50 to 100 units of food and a whole bunch of weapons and armor from that trade. So that's really valuable. And the mechanisms are comparatively worthless to me because they're all made from stone, and obviously in a game where you're digging out stone constantly, stone is the one thing you don't need. So we're pretty close to the end of the year here. The traders always show up in autumn right before winter starts. Oh, here we go. We've got an armorer in a strange mood. So he has one shot basically. If he decides to make an item, and if he succeeds in making an artifact, then he'll get out of his strange mood, and otherwise he'll go crazy. So that could be pretty dangerous. So some of the extra shops that I laid down at the end of the corridor are shops that dwarves like to use for making artifacts. So all of those stones that we dug out of that corridor all have to be mined out now. Let's see here. So that river, it's winter time, so the river froze over, so that's all why it's teal colored. But what I'm going to do is, since it's frozen, I can delve into that frozen river, and I'm going to, let's see here, here's the trading screen. The trader interrupts you after you finish trading with them to figure out what you want for next year. Anyway, I'm putting down a corridor through the river, and then what my plan is I'm going to like set up possibly a moat inside inside the fortress to protect the dwarves in the event that enemies get down in there. But winter doesn't last that long, and so the river melts again, and so now that's all flooded. So we'll have to wait until next year to actually set up that moat. See here, looks like that dwarf finally went crazy. He's running around like raving mad. But fortunately he hasn't decided to kill anybody, so looks like I'm safe for the moment. But would be a good idea to start up a military at this point, because you never really know with crazy dwarves running around. So I'm setting up a little extra area. I'm going to move probably more stockpiles down in there, but for the moment it's just extra expansion space. Got a nice series of traps in front of that front door there. They're all wooden right now, but it's better than nothing. So that's the fortress after the first year. I'm going to take a quick look through it so that you can see each level: ground level, level below ground level, 2 below, 3 below. This is all progress made in the first year, so this fortress is probably off to a pretty good start. As first years go, that's pretty successful. And they all have bedrooms too, so Dwarf Fortress, pretty fun game, pretty ridiculously complicated, but really rewarding if you get into it.